There we go. Okay, now we are starting. So for those joining us later in the recording, welcome to Math 101. We are OM1. We are starting off the semester right here on our first day on Monday. My name is Linda Curry, and welcome. I look forward to working with you. We actually have 8 weeks this session, so instead of 7 weeks, I'll say 8 weeks. So I look forward to working with you over the next 8 weeks. Oops, I hear somebody in the waiting room. 1 second. There we go. So welcome. It was the last welcome. We just started our recording. So my share screen should be coming through for everybody. I have our course homepage up, which is the syllabus. On the homepage, your landing page, you should also see recent announcements. So there's 2 announcements up, the hello and welcome announcement and the how to navigate the course announcement. And if you scroll down, the remainder of the syllabus is here, as well as information. So in general, if you're new to our courses and the system that we use, it's called Canvas. In Canvas, the left-hand navigation here, home, announcements, syllabus, modules. You have several links here on your left-hand navigation. You can collapse that or expand it. If you're on a mobile view, sometimes it'll stack things and you're just scrolling. On the right hand, you have several items here as well, different views, and a little to-do list will auto-populate based on due dates or calendar activity dates, right? So today with our synchronous session starting at 5:30, that should be in your to-do list because it's a calendar item. Other items are there based on their due dates as well. All right, so we are a fully online course. Sorry, jumping a little bit. We are a fully online course, but we have these class sessions on Mondays that we'll record. And I also have office hours scheduled on Wednesdays, or I'm available for appointments. You can also use BrainFuse for tutoring. And built into the course are all kinds of videos and little walkthrough tutorial type activities. So you got lots of different things that are asynchronous, including your discussions where you share problems with each other and can help each other out as well. Just kind of like an asynchronous tutoring session, really. That can be useful and changes from class to class based on how active you are. So if you know you need a lot of support, reach out to a couple of people, be study buddies, know that you're going to check in with each other in the discussions throughout the week a few times, and that can really build a sense of community and support. All right, so I will show us real quick our syllabus here. Again, my name is Linda Curry, and I scheduled some office hours for Wednesdays from 3 to 5 p.m., and that is Philadelphia time. I know that's early for anybody out on the East Coast, so just schedule with me individually if you need other times. But different people work different shifts and different schedules. So we have class at 5:30. I scheduled office hours a little earlier. And if people need some later appointments, I can be available as needed. So please use the inbox communication tool that's built into our Canvas system as your first outreach to me. But if you need to, feel free to email me directly. If emailing me directly, it's best to use your official student email and put the course information in the subject line, like Math 101 question on week 5 assignment, right? So that I know, who you are, what you're asking about right away. When it comes through the inbox over here on the left side, our inbox, let me get my little pointer. There we go. So over here, our inbox is on the left hand navigation. And if you need it, my email to email me directly is right here. Curry is spelled C-U-R-R-I-E and then my first initial L, and at lackawanna.edu. Our Peirce emails still forward directly. If it comes into that one, it'll forward to the lackawanna.edu. So either one gets used, I will get it either way. So our synchronous meetings, you're here, so I assume you're good with that, but the link is in several places for you. It's a calendar item at the bottom of the syllabus. That should be in your to-do list, and it's right here in the syllabus. Keep in mind, my office hours that we just talked about have a different Zoom link because that's open across my classes or anybody else that I'm working with. Whereas our course Zoom link is just for our course on our Mondays. So two different Zoom links for you. And they're both right here in the syllabus. All right. I know you can all scroll through and read through the syllabus. So I'm not going to hit everything heavy, but I did want to point out, and I see the chat, I'll get that in a second. I did want to point out the textbook, chapters 4 through 6, and then 10 and 11 are separate PDF files here that open a little neater. The full book is also posted for you in the modules, but I wanted to point out the two PDFs here because I think they're a little easier to download and utilize. So they're here, and you have them also in modules. All right, 1 second. I see a note that there's a chat. All right. Oh, not able to hear me. Okay. Can everybody else hear me? I did do an audio check before class started, and it was coming in and out fine when I did the check. Can I get a little thumbs up if everybody else can hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, so not sure what to say then. As long as other people can hear me and my check was good, if you're having a lot of trouble, you might need to just listen to the recording later. But go ahead and stay with us and see if you can get that resolved. Right, there are several other readings and resources and a course map that organizes items by week for you as well. So in addition to the main textbook for the course, the Developmental Math Emporium, I recommend this both in Math 101 and Math 102. It is a great wealth of information. You can use it for free. It tries to prompt you, right, like everything. Create an account, give us your information, right? But you don't actually have to create an account, and it is free to use. If you do not create an account, you do have to keep track of what you've done if you want to keep track of what you've done, or just go in and click on the items that you need at that time, at any time. All right, and welcome. I see, is that Juliana? So welcome. Let me get you marked in here. All right, so again, this link here, Developmental Math Emporium, is a great resource as well. It has little mini lessons. It's the technical word here that we use in the education field is things are chunked. It's chunked out with little chunks. I don't like that word, so I'll just say it is nicely organized, and it looks like a lot because it's broken down into small topics, so you can identify the topic that you want and work through that with brief descriptions, examples, and ability to practice and check yourself. So it's a great resource. All right, I hear another person in our waiting room. So I will let you look at those learning outcomes and what we're doing in the course while I let that person in. All right, welcome to those that are here. We are just scrolling through the syllabus and talking about the syllabus for a few minutes. So welcome to those that are just arriving. All right, so our learning outcomes, computation and real world applications in this course are the main focus. A lot of fraction, decimal percent, and percent applications, including finance, order of operations, being able to do that computation, working with some powers and some roots, Solving problems involving formulas. We will do a good bit with simple and compound interest, take a quick look at descriptive statistics. You will have several computational aids, examples in the book and in those other resources that help you do it, with a calculator by hand. But you will also have things such as this time value of money solver. Let me move my, sorry. I have my, there we go. The time value of money solver is one of the online calculators that you have to use here. So we'll get to that for annuities and compounded interest. So you'll be doing a good bit of computation, but you'll have a lot of support as well. Clearly and concisely communicate mathematical solutions with words and symbols. So in the discussions each week, you're going to be sharing 2 problems. They should be problems that were a bit of a struggle to you. Don't just grab the first 2 problems and say, boom, I'm done. You might not like your grades then, because if you're looking for full credit, it might not be full credit. Right? I'm looking to see that you're thinking critically, communicating critically, and completely. Right? So clearly and concisely communicate mathematical solutions, words and symbols. Right? What formula did you use? How did you use that formula? Okay, now that you understand and share how you plugged your numbers in and knew which numbers to plug in, how did you do the computation? Including if you went to a web calculator or system, how did you enter it in? How did you know that your output was the right thing, right? So some critical thinking, some communication. Think about it. If somebody were sitting right next to you in class, how would you explain it to them? So organized, maybe a little more narrative is fine. It doesn't have to be, just cut and dry. Like, here's my equation, I plug this in, boom, there's my answer. Right? Write several sentences. How would you explain it to somebody? So we have quite a few different things that we're working on. I'm trying to move this little, there we go. So your grade for the course is a weighted average of course assessments. So weighted average, we'll talk about them later in the course. So assignments, including your homework problems and quizzes. We will use a system called MAT101 Math. It integrates directly in with our Canvas course. So when you click into your assignment, it creates an account for you. It's a free system, and you just go right on in. Discussions and a cumulative final exam. So that's how they're weighted at 60%, 20%, and 20%. So where you spend the most time is working on your problem assignments every week. So that is the 60%. Discussions and cumulative final exam are each 20%. In general, I like to leave discussions open a little longer, right? Life happens. Maybe that week something happened, you didn't get to participate. I try to leave them open a little longer so that people have time to go back and discuss. Or if something happened and you still needed to put your main post in, you have time to do that. Okay, you'll find with me, I'm big on a discussion is a discussion. If you do all your discussion work in 10 minutes on one day and never go back and talk with anybody, it wasn't a discussion, right? It was a, see you later, boom, here it is. I'm looking for a discussion. So if you notice when you look at the discussions that language is in there, that you need to be interacting. And if you look at the rubric, there is a category for that interaction. So if you're striving to get full credit on the discussion, plan time to put both your main post in and a couple times to just check in and write some notes back. Maybe you help somebody else with something. Maybe you go in and say, oh my gosh, I made that same mistake. Thank you. Now I know what to do to correct something, right? A few sentences, but it needs to be meaningful, not just, wow, thanks, right? So a few sentences, stuff like wow, thanks is welcome too. But if you want full credit, look at the information on the rubric and be sure that you're giving a little bit more than that. All right, mapping of the weekly objectives, our readings, our activities. all of these things. This course map you'll find in pretty much all of our courses. We try very hard to get a map together for it. The individual weekly items are on each weekly module, but it's nice too that you have this full map you can download and get a good overview of the course. Lots of helpful links are there. You'll see the Lumen Learning, try to identify what ones in there will be helpful that week. There's Khan Academy, if you're not familiar with them, Ed Ready. There's lots of curated items. If you're looking at something and you think you want to share it because it's a good one, stick it in the discussion for your classmates. There are a lot of homeschool sites that are great. Just be careful. There are a few what I call cheat sites that you want to avoid. And some of the ones that I provide, again, they're curated. They're ones that I'm familiar with. And you'll notice not a lot of issues with pop-up ads, pop-under ads, or trying to sell you things and keep your information, right? I'm very big on being careful with your footprint that way. So if you are searching around, YouTube is a wealth of information, but be careful what all types of things you click on if you just do a general search. Right, so I will leave the rest of that for you to look at. Calculators we talk about briefly here. There's a free calculator that comes with Windows. I like Wolfram Alpha. I use that in MAT102. You're welcome to start using that at any time. We have several computation calculators for annuities and financial applications that are built into this course, and a statistics solver for basic descriptive statistics that's provided. So lots of these tools are already provided for you. As a basic calculator, I will demonstrate the Windows calculator in class. If you have a smartphone, typically, you can set it for scientific view and turn it sideways. Make sure that portrait lock is turned off. Turn it sideways and you get all kinds of other buttons. So you want to be sure you have parentheses, that you have exponents, logarithms, things of that nature to be sure it works good for Math 101 and Math 102. And so almost everybody should have those calculators, whatever calculator you're going to use. Get familiar with it. Sometimes entering can be different on one brand versus another. So you just have to learn your calculator and how it wants you to enter things. All right, one more person, 1 second. All right, let's see if that's for Linda. Welcome. All right, so that brings us to the course summary at the bottom. We are here. Today is our first class period. I put a little 8 p.m. time frame on the meet and greet just so it would pop up on the to-do list for everybody. So I hope you have a chance sometime today or tomorrow to get the meet and greet submitted. The first item up here is homework 0, just a little introduction to the system that we use, MyOpenMath, and then our first set of assignments in the MyOpenMath system. I am going to go here to our module. So I'm expanding my left hand navigation. Again, these lines up here, your menu, collapse and expand. You can also right-click items, open a new tab. Different browsers have slightly different features. I'm using Chrome. About a minute to finish loading. All right, so module view, I encourage everyone to use module view to see the structure of the content. And then once you click into an item, there will be a next and a previous button down towards the bottom, so you can go to the next item in the list. I'm going to start by collapsing everything and just opening what we need as we go. All right, the student resources module should be the same in all of your classes. So if you need any general resources, you can come in here, expand that, and take a look at those. There are a few quick links specific to this course. So the time value of money solver that I just showed you a minute ago, that link is there. Wolfram Alpha that I like as well is here. And the statistics calculator that we will also use at the end of this course is here. So quick links. All right. About the course. So good place to start. It says start here, right? A little welcome message to you, some information about our course that you can read through. We are using open education resources, which is why there's no textbook that you have to purchase for the course. It's all provided for you as a PDF that you can download and read on your computer. There are several interactive systems, My Open Math and Lumen Math that we're using, and those are all free as well. There are calculator apps, again, that are all free. And if you, again, have a calculator on your cell phone, that could work well for you as well. Now, I don't know everybody's background, but I do like to start with just a little bit of information, growth mindset and how you can grow your brain. I will bring up the PowerPoint for a second here. I am very interested in neurosciences. Second, while I drag the PowerPoint over. It is not wanting to come join us on this monitor. There we go. I am very interested in neurosciences, earth sciences, mathematics. I did my dissertation on studying anxiety, did a good bit of reading research in psychology field about anxiety, in the education field about it. And I want to help everybody feel like they can succeed, right? This is called self-efficacy. So understanding how your brain works and knowing that even if you struggled with math in the past, it doesn't mean you're going to struggle now, right? So as we were growing up, teenagers back in middle school and high school, we got up to this thing called algebra, and a lot of people just throw up their hands and say, not for me. Well, if that was you, I want you to say, okay, that was me then, but my adult brain is better situated to handle this. My brain is more organized and has a better ability to organize these things now. So I'm hoping that you will read these, that they will be interesting and helpful to you, and that you know, I believe as an adult, you have a good ability to learn this, to understand this, and to do this. The growth mindset and growing your brain. All right, that brings us up to week 1. So each week there will be a synchronous time outline and recording page that gets built. Sometimes items will get added as we go along, but I will typically publish it the day before or the day of class with at least an outline for what we're doing in class. I see someone on our cell phone here, so one moment here. All right, great. So welcome again to those who joined after we got started. We're still clicking through and talking a little bit of an overview of the course. We went through the syllabus, and now we are up here in our week 1 items. So the first homepage for week 1 will be the information from our course map and what are we doing this week. Our week 1 synchronous outline and recording. Notice the word and recording. right? So our outline is there, our PowerPoint slides are there, and after class, and sometimes a few hours or the next morning, the recording will be there as well. Oh, I hear somebody chatting. All right, there we go. Thank you. The meet and greet for week 1. So please go ahead and do that at some point in the next day or two if you can. Week 1 learning resources and homework assignments. So our links will be in there. I will show you that in a moment. And our week 1 discussion. So here in module view, you can see the structure of everything. So once I click into an item, I will have little arrows at the bottom to go to the next item or back to the previous item. And it will walk me through every item in our module. Now, I'm going to scroll down for just a moment, then we'll come right back here and click through them. All right, so week 1, week 2, all the way down to week 7, our final exam week. And notice down below, Unit 1, Personal Finance. Unit 1, Modeling Math, more Personal Finance applications. Unit 2, Beginning Algebra, and Unit 3 on Statistics. So those are the math topics that we're working on. And you have quick links up above in our weekly modules, but you can come down here at any time and expand these to see all of the support materials, workbooks, your readings, mini lessons, all of these things here are optional. The graded items, see it says Unit 1 homework. Homework items count towards the course grade. The mini lessons are optional. They do not count towards your course grade, but they're a good resource to help you study and learn. And then the homework items that are assigned. Week 1, week 2. So in module view, you see these headings and these little notes. So just a heads up, when you're in Canvas and you just click through next, 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 it doesn't show you those little text headings. It just skips over them, goes to the next item. So it's good to always look a little bit in module view because you see this information like Unit 1 homework. Homework items count towards course grade. Week 1, percent and interest, sections 1 through 6. Week 2, annuities and loans, sections 7, 8, and 9. Okay, and then we'll go to the next one. Right. I'll go back up. Weekly modules here, math units are all down below. So you just scroll if you want to get to those, or you have a link in here with your resources for a quick link. All right, so week 1, just like on that map for the entire course, we have a table, we have links to some of these resources, information about what you're working on, the textbook chapter, and how to be assessed. So week 1, we are looking at chapter 4 and chapter 5 in our textbook. And in the syllabus, for those who joined after we went through the top of the syllabus, at the top of the syllabus, there are 2 PDF links. One that says chapters 4 through 6, and the other, I believe it's 10 and 11. Those are nice because they're a little smaller, a little easier to deal with. There is a link to the entire textbook as well at the top of your module. And then our weekly activities. So here's my next and previous button. So I'm going to click next. Let me get this out of the way. All right, so our optional synchronous session, we're in that now, welcome. Our outline, we talked and went through our syllabus, kind of a quick overview of the course. We'll take a look at Map and Math in a few minutes here. The PowerPoint slides are here as well, right here. MAT101 OM1 week 1.pptx, that's your PowerPoint slides. And the course map is here as well as in our syllabus. So just here for convenience as another link. So more information on computation is in the syllabus. If you purchase the Texas Instruments DA2 Plus calculator, that was what we have listed for many years in the bookstore, but we no longer list that just because so many people have access to a calculator on their cell phone that is going to do everything you need. But if you have purchased the Texas Instruments DA2 Plus calculator for another course at Peirce previously, here is a document that we provide to be sure you have the settings set properly. In general, whatever calculator you're using, be sure that it shows you lots of decimal places. If your calculator by default is cutting off at 2 decimal places, you're not seeing all the information you need. So you may need to adjust your settings. Also, you want to be sure it's following the order of operations. So work through the example problems in the book and in the systems and make sure that you're getting the correct answers when you type them into the calculator. Because if a calculator setting needs adjusted, let's try to find that right away in week 1, get an appointment with a tutor or with me, and be sure those settings are correct and that you're able to get the correct answers to example problems. That way you know you're ready to jump into your graded work. All right, notice my little note. Recording will be posted here after class or the next day. So depending on how long it takes the system to compile the recording, I download it and then upload it into this Canvas system, into another system here. And it can take a little while for each of those steps. So it will either be after class this evening or tomorrow morning that the recording is posted. And you click next. All right, meet and greet discussion. All right, taking it a moment to load. Thank you for those who've already put a note in there. So welcome, please go ahead and do that when you get a chance. If you want to share a picture of yourself, you should be able to upload pictures or insert them in there. Again, my name is Linda Curry. Here's some basic information about me. There's also a few little notes about me in our PowerPoint today. All right. Give me just one moment to go back to the module. All right. Sometimes with the modules, you want to give it a moment, as I just did there, because when you click on them, if you start scrolling too soon and it starts jumping because it wants to take you to where you left off. Again, different browsers and systems can act a little different, so get to know your own system. For me, I found I just want to hesitate for a moment, and then it kind of jumps to where it needs to be. Then I can start my scrolling. All right, so meet and greet. Next in line is our learning resources and homework assignments, and then our discussion. Now, I'm right now in a student preview mode in Canva. So I don't want to click on the homeworks yet because I want to exit out of that and go into my teacher preview mode when we go into our assignments. So bear with me for just a few minutes. I'm going to pull up our PowerPoint slides. But when you're here, you can click on these assignments and it takes you right into them. So Unit 1, Personal Finance, start here for all learning resources. In other words, our modules were set up, module 1 through 7, and our final exam module. And then below that was Unit 1, Personal Finance, right? So that'll take you right to that Unit 1 and in the module. And quick links here for the assignments that are scheduled for this week. Right, so if you want the learning resources, those mini lessons, the little workbook, those kind of things. Click that Unit 1 Personal Finance, start here. If you're ready to come in and go right to your assignment, you can click on any of the assignments. So navigating, you have quick links here, or you can scroll down below the first couple modules and get it that way also. Excuse me. Go back to our PowerPoint slides. All right, so we did our course overview. Our academic calendar, again, affords us 8 weeks, so we will use that. The final exam will not be due until the end of that 8th week, so that gives you a little flexibility if you have projects and things due in other classes, and you need a little flexibility in week 7, we have a week 8, so there's some flexibility here, and we're happy to use all of that time. Our virtual synchronous sessions are Monday. Required text is provided free to you. Graded assignments. So the problem assignments in my open math get automatically graded. If there's a little issue, like, you know what, I typed this in right, or maybe I typed in something more than I needed to, or I forgot the $sign, right? If there's something little, I can go in and override that. Don't stress over it. I know we're all very busy. Just go through things, make me a little list, and let me know what needs done. In general, we're a Monday through Sunday week. So due dates are typically Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Now, I know some people were coming in at different times, so I'm going to restate this. I like to leave discussions open longer. So keep in mind, you may post, and maybe it's a while before you see a grade because I don't grade them until after it closes. Okay, so, and I like to leave them open longer than the due date so that there's time to get your main post in and your interaction posts in. So do pay attention to the discussions, make sure that you're active in them. And in the rubric for those, you can see the criteria for earning full points on the interaction as well. Brain Fuse is good tutoring for the math. I also have my Wednesday office hours, and you can schedule individually with me. I'm happy to do groups too. Sometimes a couple of you, if you're working together, and hey, we have our group meeting Saturday morning. You know, if you need me to check in with you, let me know. No problem. All right, so we went through the syllabus, but just quickly, be sure to read through it a little more closely. The growth mindset and growing your brain, and the little introduction to my open math assignment. Week 1 module, we will look at some of the math here in just a minute, but there are several problem assignments for you to work on. All right, so percentages is where we will start. A couple applications with percentages, including simple interest and compound interest. And then looking at this item we call the annual percentage yield. And we'll notice that compounding does some good things for us. When we get what we call compound interest, that means that the interest is computed and added to our account more frequently. So it might be done once a year, might be done twice a year. Maybe it's done quarterly, which is 4 times a year. Maybe it's done daily, every day. And you'll see what that does. If you're investing, that's a really good thing because you're earning money on the money. But keep in mind too, if you're signing documents for loans, you know, cars, mortgages, loans for school, loans for anything else, if it's compounded, that might be more interest you're paying. So it's good to be sure to keep that perspective in mind. All right, so there's several slides to just talk about the math and how to do the math. But I want to be sure I show you the My Open Math system as well. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this for a minute and just click into the system for you to show you the system. And then we'll come back and do our math practice. Are there any quick questions for me before I shift into the My Open Math system? Okay, great. So give me one moment to close this out and leave my student view so that I can I'm scrolling too soon. It wasn't ready for me. All right, so I clicked on our week 1 learning resources and homework assignments. I'm going to click on the first assignment here. So for you, when you click on it, it should be creating your account and giving you access. Again, this is a free system. It will look just slightly different for me because I have a few options, and I will go into a teacher preview. So here's my teacher preview. So I have just a few extra bells and whistles around on mine than you will have, but in general, it will look very similar. So homework 1.1 percentage basics and applications involving percent. Notice a couple options here. 3 tries on the question. I can also reload a question or get a similar question. So you have lots of features in here to assist as you go through. Some of them have videos explaining. We've typed in some little notes like, don't forget to include a percent sign, right, in your answer. So one of the things that you'll note as you go through the beginning of this course, we have pulled in materials that have been developed as part of different initiatives to provide free resources to keep the costs down. That's great, but right, everything has a pro and a con. The downside of these things is that different authors type the questions in and use different wordings or different settings. So as we start out in this first unit, you'll notice the author is very big on put the dollar sign there. And if there's 0 cents, put decimal point 00. Okay? Put your percent sign in. Other authors will be different. Other authors will type it in and have a dollar sign there and don't want you to put it in. So you have to learn to pay attention as we shift from materials developed in one person and another. Now I have gone through and put different comments like this, like don't forget to include a percent sign in your answer in different places to help us. If there's a little note that you think is needed on a couple questions, let me know, but be very specific so I know exactly where to go, right? And which assignment, which question do you think it needs a little note? And I can go in and make sure a little note pops up for it. All right, so let me scroll up some. So let's just throw the question out there. The fraction 1/2 is equivalent to what percent? Is that something that you just know off the top of your head? If you don't know off the top of your head, do you have an idea how to find it? Let me just throw it out there. Just unmute yourself if you want to answer it. Or chat. There's the chat too. Okay, Gabrielle, 0.5. Good. 1/2 as a fraction is the decimal 0.5. Good, Veronique. Yep. Good. So now, once we have the decimal, how do we convert it to a percent? Good. Juliana says 50%. So one of the things we'll learn this week is that to go from the decimal to the percent, we move that decimal point 2 places. We're basically multiplying by 100. and tagging on that percent sign. Because it would be 50 over 100 that equals 0.5. So 50% is 0.5, which is the fraction 1/2. Good, so if I type in 50 and forget my percent sign and submit my question, you can retry the question. All right, let's retry the question. And with my percent sign. All right, so see how the system is a learning resource. Okay, we call this type of assessment a formative assessment. It's there to help you learn. So jump in, use it, and use those resources as you go along. All right, so let me scroll down. Let's do another one while we got it up. All right, how about this one, 2/9. I bet you don't know 2/9 off the top of your head, so grab a calculator. And when we have a fraction, we take that numerator, the number on top is the numerator, 2, divided by the number on the bottom, 9, denominator. So 2 divided by 9, that will give us the decimal. And then we're going to multiply by 100 to get our percent. And it says round your percent to the nearest tenth. All right, anybody want me to do it with the Windows calculator, or do you feel comfortable grabbing your own calculator and just charging forward? All right, I'll pull up the Windows calculator. I'm not seeing anything in chat yet. I see a few things coming up here. Good. All right, for anybody who needs it in Windows, you can click on your little Windows icon and just search for the calculator, or it is a Windows accessory. You can go under the accessories to find it. And typically after you use it once, it should come up for you in your quick access link. All right, my computer's moving a little slow. I'm opening the calculator and then we'll get that typed in. All right, so I see 22%, and I see the 0.22222 with lots of twos. So remember, it said round to the nearest tenth of a percent. Right, so how am I going to enter that in? Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to make it huge. Right, so if it's 22.2 repeating forever, when I go to round to the 10th place, there's going to be a 2 in the 10th place, and I'll look to the right. There's going to be another 2 because it's 2 repeating. So 22.2%. Oops, I meant to click down here, not up there. Sorry. All right, so I would just say be careful. If you just typed in 22%, it said to round to the nearest tenth of a percent, so we needed to go 22.2%. So just be careful with where you round at. How about the next one, 2 over 7? If you do your 2 divided by 7, there we go. 2 divided by 7. Multiply by 100 to convert it to, goodness. Multiply by 100. There we go. I think it was clicking on me too much. Let me clear it. 2 divided by 7. Get that better. Now mine was off a little bit. Times 100, so I get our 28 point, what's it going to round to? 28 point what? I see a 6 up there. Does everybody agree? The 5 goes up to a 6 because of the 7 next to it. So that's how you work through these. And again, there's some videos here and those mini lessons as well. All right, so fraction, decimal, percent. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. But now you see this is how the My Open Math system works. There's support built into it, as well as there's mini lessons and your PowerPoint. Okay. So here we go. Fraction, decimal, and percent, just like what we were working on a minute ago. Our fraction, we do top divided by bottom to get the decimal. Multiply our decimal by 100. And remember to tag in our percent sign. Now, if we're given the percent sign means per 100. So we would say 60 over 100 and go back the other way. Okay, so how about if we had something like this, though? 50 1/4%. So we have to think, okay, this has a fractional percent. So 1/4. Do we already know what a quarter is? If we wrote it in it as a decimal, 1 divided by 4. A quarter of a dollar would be how many cents? Yeah, 25, so 0.25. Good. So 50.25%, we could write 50.25 over 100. And then that becomes 0.5025, because when I divide by 100, I move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Notice the red arrow this time is going this way on me. So I started here. My decimal point would have been 50.25. And then I divide by 100, and I get 0.5025 as the decimal equivalent. And then if I want to go all the way to representing that as a fraction, it's a little messy on this one, but good practice. There's 4 decimal places, right? It's decimal point 5025. There's 4 decimal places. Notice how many zeros I have in the denominator. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5,000, 25, 10,000. Okay, so we follow the rules for reading instead of saying decimal point 5025. If we follow the strict rules for mathematics and read this number, we would have said 5,000, 25, 10,000. And that's exactly what it is as a fraction. Now, how do we reduce a fraction like this? Right? Don't be overwhelmed by it. If the top ends in a 5, the bottom ends in a 0, right? Or if we have 5s and 0s, that's an indicator we can divide top and bottom by 5 and get the number smaller. If top and bottom are both even, then you can cut them each in half and get a smaller fraction. And if they're still even, cut them in half again. Right? So as you go through and you have to reduce to lowest terms, you don't have to necessarily find the largest common factor. You can do it little bits at a time. Feel free to do it little bits at a time. All right, so there's 2 more arrows going to the right and to the left for a little more practice in this course. And you may not have worked with fractional things like 50 1/4% before, right? So we're notching it up a little bit. It's a college class. And real world applications deal with fractional percents all the time, whether it's loans, investments, taxes. These fractional percents are part of our real world, as are percents greater than 100. Right? So here's an example, 180%. Well, 100% would be the whole number 1. So when we have decimals that are like 1.8 or even 2.5, right? Things like that represent values that are greater than 100%. They would then be fractions that are improper fractions. If we have an improper fraction, we can write it as a mixed number. And that last one there, very similar to our 50 1/4%. Another common fraction, this would be 45 3/4%. Right? So 3/4 would be 75 cents, so 45.75%. Sometimes thinking of money can help with those types of decimals. As you saw, your first assignment has a lot of practice, and here's a table for you. There's a table in your book. There's Lumen Learning. There's mini lessons. There's lots of additional support for you if you need it on this topic. All right. Sorry, I think I went a little too far on that one. All right. Applications with our percent. You'll do a few types of applications where you're just practicing, and then you'll branch out into simple interest and compound interest here in week 1. So applications involving percentages. Different resources will use different words, right? Percent, part out of whole, or the base, the rate, right? Principal and interest. You're going to have different terminology. Here we are with the very broadest way of explaining it right now, and then you'll look at specific applications. So if we have a part, then it is a percent of a whole. So percent equals part over whole, or equivalently, you can think the part is the percent times the whole, right? Or base times rate. So there's a teeny tiny little dot between percent and whole. So a multiplication dot is typically raised and in the middle of the line. You can also use an asterisk, which is with your number 8 on your keyboard, to represent multiplication. So I typically represent it that way instead of a little x, because a little x, when you get to algebra, can look like your variable, right? So it's good to use an asterisk in your discussions if you need to represent multiplication. Keep in mind also, if we write 2 items next to each other and put one of them in parentheses, it will also be implied that they're being multiplied, right? So if I have 5 times 20, I can do that by 5 and then in parentheses 20 right next to each other. Some calculators will recognize that that is multiplication. Other calculators, if you did that, it wouldn't recognize it. So using the multiplication between them is something you will have to learn based on your calculator. All right. When we are in mathematics, we say out of, we typically mean division. When we just say of, a lot of times we're meaning multiplication. So take your time when you read through problems and think about, what is it saying to me? Is this an out of situation or just an of multiplication? So here we have 243 people out of 400. So that's part out of whole that like dogs. So what percent is that? Well, to compute my percent, I do my part divided by my whole. So 243 divided by 400. And then we would just pay attention to what it said. Do I round to the whole percent? Do I need to round to 1/10%? Just pay attention to however it asks you to type in that answer. All right, so who got something for that? 243 divided by 400. What percent of our respondents are doggy lovers? All right, good. I'm going to push it on that 60. If you were rounding to the whole number percent, would it be 60 or would it be 61, and why? Here out. Okay, so we have 243. We're dividing by 400 people. Yeah, so I'm going to multiply by 100 to convert it to my percent. Oops, this is jumping on me so much. I apologize. So 60.75 is the percent. So if I'm rounding to the whole percent, I would say 61%. Because of that 7, it makes my 0 go up to a 1. If I'm rounding to the 10th place, I would say 60.8, because that 5 makes the 7 round up. Right? If it didn't tell me to round at all, I'd say 60.75%, right? So just pay attention to the directions when you go to enter your answers. Good. How many doggy lovers do we have here? Are we more cat people, dog people?
I have 2 dogs, 1 cat.
All right, great. I was gonna say I'm a little bit of both. I love my cat, but I also love the doggies, so it's all good. Both good, yeah. All right. So applications involving percent. What is 30% of 80? So now it's not out of, it's just 30% of 80. And I just need to multiply. So it's like base times rate. So 30% of 80. I'm going to write my 30% in its decimal format and multiply it by the 80. Let me get my text box here. All right, so it's going to be 30% times 80. So that's 0.3 times 80. And what do we get? All right, good. Yeah, so you have 24 in the chat too. Good. Now, I just wanted to take a minute here with this calculator, the scientific calculator here. Some of them will have a percent key and some will not. If you have a calculator that has a percent key, a lot of times that is a one-way key, in which case you could type in 30 and hit your percent key and it'll convert it to 0.3 for you, but it doesn't go back the other way. So it can be handy if you have a percent key to just type in 30 and hit percent, but don't forget you're still doing times 80. All right, great. How about the next one? Let me move the calculator out of the way. 884 is 85% of what number? So there's a couple ways to approach this. So let me put it out there. Does anybody already know what I'm going to do with this one? I want to take 85% times the unknown number equals 884. Anybody already know what to do? All right, there's a couple ways to approach it. If you like proportions, some people like to say put the is over the of, and then the other parts over the percent over the 100. So we would have the 884 over the unknown question mark equals 85 over 100, and we can do some cross multiplying and solve our proportion. If you've already done a little bit of algebra, you might think, oh, I just write it directly down and I have my equation to solve. So there's a couple ways to know what to do. It will come down to 884 divided by 0.85, whichever way you start with. Let me get my text box here. All right, so it would be 884 equal sign for is, 85%. I'm going to write it as its decimal. And I don't know what the other number is. I'm going to use an X, or you can use an N, right? Whatever your favorite letter is to represent that. I divide both sides by 0.85 to get my letter. So I'm doing 884 divided by 0.85. And what am I getting? So 1,040. And stop and think, does that make sense? Well, 85% of that number is 884. So it has to be bigger than 884, but not too much bigger, right? Because 884 is 85% of that. It's almost, right? It's most of it, 85% of it. So it should be bigger than 884, but not like mega huge, right? So 1,040 sounds reasonable, right? So that type of number sense, I would encourage you to think about as you're doing these problems. If you're not sure you have them set up right, that little bit of number sense can help you identify if you, say, accidentally multiplied instead of divided, right? Or vice versa. All right, good. So here I am on the screen. I am going to do the little option that I have to save it. I can save a screen image, and you should have that option as well. If not disabled, I don't know, it might come up different on different systems, but up where it says, you are viewing Linda Curry's screen, there should be an option that you can click on to save a screen capture image. Typically, when I annotate a good bit, I will try to save one and compile the screen images and place them next to the recording on the page each week. So that's just something I try to do as I go through with our classes. All right, is anybody still trying to explore whether they could save that screen before I delete what we wrote and go to the next slide? All right, hearing no yays, I will go ahead and delete that and go on to the next slide. All right, the next topic, absolute and relative change. So relative change and absolute change. Absolute change is just the quantity difference, right? Where are we now? Where did we start? Do a subtraction. The absolute change will have the same units as the original quantity. The relative change, though, is that amount, that absolute change, divided by our starting quantity. If we are expressing it as a percent, we're multiplying by 100. So basically, relative change, our units would cancel. So we have no units there. So absolute and relative change. The value of the car dropped from $35,400 down to $32,200. Determine the absolute and the relative change in the situation. Well, if I want the absolute change, I just subtract the two values. So 35,400 subtract 32,200. How much is that? All right. Not seeing anything coming up in the chat yet. Should be 3,200. Yep, good, 3,200. Now, keep in mind when you go through the assignments, like I said, right? The first author is kind of picky on things. If you type in 3,200 and it's like, huh, it didn't accept it. Oh, I need a dollar sign. This author wants me to have a dollar sign or decimal point 00 because there were no cents. Just take a minute to be sure that you're seeing how it wants you to enter things. The relative change. So now we know the absolute change. To find the relative change, well, 3,200 is the part, the whole is our starting quantity. Let's find that percent. So 3,200 divided by where we started, 35,400. So based on that starting value and rounded to the nearest tenth of a percent, what is our relative change? I'll go ahead and pull my calculator back up. Right, 3,200 divided by starting quantity. 35,400 was the starting value. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm clicking on things and it's like doubling things. I'm going to type it instead. And then we're going to multiply by 100 to convert to a percent. Yeah, I see your question mark, because you're questioning, well, it's 9. Do I enter it as 9 or 9.0? Good. So if it's saying round to the tenth of a percent, it probably wants you to do 9.0, and don't forget to type in the percent sign. In this first unit, the authors who typed in these questions were very particular with wanting the symbols and signs put in. Later authors are not as particular, so we will have that discussion with the other units. Good, because to the right of the 0 is just a 3. Don't let that 9 and 5 throw you. When we're rounding, we look at the place we're rounding and look just to its right, just to that place value to its right. So the 3 says not enough, so the 0 stays a 0, 9.0%. All right, so how about we just did a card drop one. Let's go with the next one here, Anthony and Johnny. I believe this is one of the problems that you have in the homework assignment. So they each lost 10 pounds, but if their starting values were different, then who could claim that they lost the most weight? Right, so as a relative to where they started, who technically lost the most, right? Who had the bigger percentage to brag on? So we'll take the same numerator, 10. We'll divide it by 168 for Anthony. We'll divide it by 166 for Johnny. So who was the bigger loser here? They're both very close, but all right, anybody get that one? Oh, sorry. I'm having trouble moving my calculator around. It keeps wanting to go in other places. All right, so we had 10 pounds. They each lost the same amount. For Anthony's starting point was 168. So 5.95%. Let's see, Johnny, 10. Sorry. I just have to type on my keyboard right now. 10 divided by 166. And then we'll multiply by 100 to convert to a percent. So for Johnny, 10 pounds represents just over 6% of the starting body mass. So Johnny gets the bragging right. All right, so there's several different percent increase and decrease questions here and a few more finance questions. So here we have a TV that was originally priced at $869 on sale for 35% off. What would that sale price be? So this one did not ask you for how much the person saved, right? So you could start by saying 869, multiply by 35%, find how much they saved, do a subtraction, right? Because if you saved it, subtract it off. Or you could say, well, if they saved 35%, they paid the other 65%. And just do 65% times 869 to represent what they paid. So there's a few ways to think about these. Just keep in mind what it's asking for and what information you need. So here, if I did it the first way by multiplying by 35%, I find that he's saving $304.15. So then I do 869 minus $304.15 to get a total pay of $564.85. But the next one, my bill for dinner was $85.20. If I'm leaving a tip or paying a tax on top of something, I want to be sure to add it in. Okay, so keep in mind the situation. Am I subtracting because I'm saving? Or is it something that gets added on, like a tax or a tip? Okay, so when you get your percent, stop for a second before you finish answering the question and be sure you know what is the question asking for. Okay, so TV, where you're saving, what did I pay for the TV after the discount? My dinner, what did I pay all together, including what I spent on the tip? Oh, I'm going to add there. So just take your time, slow yourself down, be sure you pay attention to when you're adding and when you're subtracting with those numbers. Here's a little one. The way it's worded can be a little confusing, so I want to take a minute with this one. So I'm taking a percent of a percent here. The interest rate on your credit card if it's at 8%, and the credit card company notifies you that the rates will go up by 7%, what will your new interest rate be? Well, if something is changing by 7%, 7% of 8 is what we're computing. And then we add that back in and round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So I'll take my calculator back here. Figure that out. So 7% of 8, keeping in mind that that 8 represents 8%. So 7%, 0.07, when I convert it to decimal, I move the decimal point 2 places over. I have to remember that 0 in front of the 7. And I'm multiplying by 8. So 0.56% is what it's increasing by. So 8% plus another 0.56. But it says round to the tenth of a percent. So my 5 goes up to a 6. Don't let all those 6s confuse you, right? It's 0.6% that it's increasing by. So it's already at 8. So now it's at 8.6%. When you're in your homework system, there are things like this sometimes, like a hint where we've typed in a little note to help you. There's a couple ways to do this. I think that the way I just walked through it is the most straightforward. Notice I typed the 8 in as an 8, but I knew in the context of this problem, it meant 8%. So it was 0.56%. Put them together, round to the tenth of a percent. All right, so here we are in our simple interest. So we have just a few interest applications here, and then that's our topics for week 1. So we're on good timing. It's 7 o'clock now. So we'll take a few more minutes to go over our interest problems. So interest is an amount of money that's accruing on top of a principal. So this could be something you're investing and receiving back, or it could be because you've borrowed something and you're paying it out. So the general language is that the interest, simple interest, equals the principal times the rate of interest, right? Times the time in years for the investment. And we multiply across. Notice the little asterisk for multiplication. Years, time in years. If it's less than a year, a fraction of a year, then you would express it however you need to. If it was 6 months, 6 out of 12, right? If it was 5 months, 5 out of 12. If it were 120 days, 120 days out of 365 days. If it were 50 weeks, 50 out of 52, because it takes 52 weeks to make a whole year, right? If it's a fraction of a year, then you need to express it that way. So here are your various formulas. Just rearranging, using a little bit of beginning algebra to rearrange that base equation. If you are computing the principal, you would take the interest and divide by rate times time. If you are finding time, you would have the interest in the numerator and divide by principal times rate. I'm going to do one thing here. Because of the way they're written here, I don't want it to look confusing to you later. All of this is in the denominator together. Okay, so if you're doing it with interest on top, and then that product rate times time in the denominator, if you type it in your calculator, you would need a set of parentheses there. So just keep that in mind. I will take a quick screen capture of that. All right. Simple interest is paid once, simply at the end of the investment. So at the end of our investment, principal plus interest is what we either receive or owe. So here we have Nasir, who is investing $12,000 at 4 3/4% simple interest for 897 days. How much interest is earned and what's the account balance at the end of the time period? Well, because I'm trying to find interest, I would do principal, right here, principal times the rate times the time. All right, my rate, 4 3/4%. So that's 4.75, right? 3/4 will be 75 cents. So 4.75%. It's still a percent. I still have to move the decimal point before I drop that percent sign. So be careful. Those are two-step problems. So I'm going to write that as point, my decimal point, 0, 4, and then 75. I think that 7's going to be messy. The 4 3/4%. This is my decimal point here. 0.0475 when I'm plugging into my equation. My time, because it's in days, I'm going to represent it as 897 days out of 365. And I can go right across. Order of operations tells me it's all in the same order of operation. I can go straight across. I'll type into my calculator 12,000 times 0.0475 for my rate times 897 divided by 365 equals. I can go straight across on my calculator with it. All right. You want me to pull that up on the Windows calculator, or are you all able to grab a calculator? And again, you can go straight across 12,000 times, and you'll have your decimal point, 0.0475 times 897 divided by 365, and then hit equals. And let me know what you get for the interest the person is earning. That's there. All right, who's getting the interest? Should be over $1,000 that they're earning. I'm going to type it out here, 79, and then I have a 4521 on my calculator. All right, so when we are rounding money, right, a penny is 1/100th of a dollar. So we're rounding to the 100th place, which is the second decimal place to the right. In this case, I have a 9. So question is, does the 9 stay a 9, or do I have to round it up to a 10 and bump it all the way over, right? So we'll say 79 cents, or we'll go up to 80 cents is the question we have to ask. Well, we're looking only to the place value to the right of the 9, and that's a 4. So because it's less than 5, the 9 stays a 9, and therefore it'll just be $1,400.79. So then our account balance at the end, right? At the end, the account balance will be, add them both together, the $12,000 that the person is investing, plus the interest they have earned. And that will be the account balance at the end. So $13,400.79. Oops, where's my dollar sign? All right, so again, order of operations, we were able to go straight across with that. When you're doing the principal, the rate, or the time, notice the parentheses that I inserted in there. You want to use those in your calculator entry so that your calculator will be, you can enter it all at once and your calculator will know, oh, order of operations, I do this part in the denominator, and then I do numerator divided by denominator to get my final answer. Right, so as you do those, when you close your parentheses, most calculators will display that little computation. Don't forget to also hit equal. If you want to do some practice problems, be sure you're okay with all of those steps on your calculator, whatever calculator you will be using. All right, so in our textbook, again, it's chapters 4 and 5 this week. So this part, simple interest, is where you're in chapter 5. So the other parts for chapter 4. So this is covered in section 5.1 on page 120. So if you need a reference for this in your textbook, it's section 5.1 and page 120. Little problem at the bottom here says, how much would you need to deposit in an account now in order to have $6,000 after 1,903 days? If you're earning 7% simple interest. So it's still a simple interest question. We will do similar questions with compound interest, and next week get into annuities and some other investments. This is just simple interest here. So we're thinking, okay, if it's simple interest, then it's my principal plus my interest to give me the account balance. I want that account balance to be $6,000. All right, well, interest is principal times rate times time. So I'm going to write principal times rate times time. And this is expressed in your textbook as well. You can go in and read the steps. So basically, we can apply a little bit of algebra to rearrange this and say, well, this is the same as principal, and then 1 plus rate times time. I factored it out. Just a little algebraic step there. So now, to find my principal, because that's what I'm looking for, how much do I deposit now? Well, my definition of an investment, that's my principal. In this case, it will be my 6,000, and I will divide by 1 plus RT. 1 plus, my rate here was 7%, right? And my time was, what was my time here? It was in days, so I will have 1903 divided by 365. And I wrote 7% like that, but how will you type it into your calculator? All right, how are you going to type that into your calculator? If your calculator has a percent button, you can do 7%. If it doesn't have a percent key, then you'll type it in as 0.07 in its decimal format. All right, so when you type that in and have the parentheses here divided by, put that in parentheses, and then hit equals, you should get $4,395.74. So again, do a little number sense check. It's growing and will later be $6,000. So that makes sense to have something in the just above 4,000 range. It's being invested for 1,903 days. Well, that's a couple of years, right? Because 365 days is a year. So it makes sense that starting around the 4,000 range, I'm growing to 6,000 in that number of days. Right, little number sense. Now, if I'd gotten something bigger than 6,000, I'd stop and say, whoa, that means I'm losing money if I'm ending at 6,000. I should have been putting money in and letting it grow to 6,000. So I must have done something wrong in my computation. Right, so do a little number sense check as you're getting your problems, and that will help you with, oh, did I divide when I should have multiplied, or vice versa. All right, I will take one more screen capture before I erase all those annotations. All right, 2 more slides for us today. Simple interest was interest that was just once at the end of an investment. Sometimes called balloon interest when it's something that you're paying back. Compound amount, interest that's earned repeatedly. It's compounded. We're earning interest. It's getting added to our account. Our account is staying invested. It's earning interest again. It's added to the account staying invested, and it repeats. The cycle repeats. The more often it repeats, the quicker your money is growing. Now, perspective. If this is the language written into a loan, be careful, because that means you're paying back more interest. So you want to see this compounding, especially when you're investing. You want to be wary of it if you're borrowing. So we have an equation given to us, and there will be different letters wherever you look. So textbook, YouTube videos here, compounding frequency, here it says C. Sometimes you'll see it as F for frequency. Sometimes you'll see it as N. Just pay attention to what goes where, and don't get too bogged down in the letter that's chosen for it. A, account, amount, sometimes written as FV for future value. P for principal, sometimes written PV for present value. Your rate, right? We sometimes will say I for interest rate. Be careful, because I represents interest, right? So R is better for rate. We typically convert that to a decimal. Our time, if it's not given to us in years, like we did with our time in days, we represent it as a fraction. And then the compounding frequency, the number of times we're computing interest and adding it into the account. Well, if it's done once a year, that would be annually. If it's done twice a year, that's semi-annually. Quarterly would be 4 times a year. If it's done every month, then it's done 12 times a year. If it's done every week, it's done 52 times a year. If it's done daily, then that's 365 days a year. So here's our basic formula. The account balance is computed directly. Now keep in mind, simple interest, we computed the interest. If we wanted to know how much was there later, we had to add the interest back in. But compound interest, our formula gets us that account balance directly. So we have to remember this little note at the bottom. The compound amount, if we want to find the interest, we take the amount minus the principal after we found the compound amount. Right, I'm going to go back up to the top here. Right, little note down here. I'm going back up here to our formula now. Principal is $14,800. plug that value in for my P, times, I have to tell my calculator multiply here, but I'm going to write it right next to my parentheses. 1 plus, my interest rate was 6%, so I write 0.06 for my rate, divided by my compounding frequency. It said semi-annually, so I'm going to use 2 for my compounding frequency. And my exponent here will be my time, 4 years, times my compounding frequency twice. In other words, if it's compounded twice a year for 4 years, it's twice in the first year, twice in the next year, twice in the next year, and twice in the next year. So it's compounded 8 times in total. Typically with these, if you're doing it by hand and plugging in your calculator, right, most people would do that 0.06 divided by 2, 1 plus that, and then type it in their calculator at the next step. Whichever step you do it in, just be careful. You want to say 14,800 times, and then your parentheses, do all of that. If you are looking for your parentheses and your exponents and you don't see them and you're on your cell phone, keep in mind, typically turning your cell phone sideways, making sure that portrait lock is turned off. It will automatically change to a different view and show you more buttons. If you're in the Windows calculator, go to the options and select scientific view, and then you will have more options. Based on your calculator, that general exponent button will either be an X to the Y or a Y to the X, or a little box with another little box, right? Just showing you that one is the base, one is the exponent. All right, so let me pull up our calculator here. I have it already in scientific view, but if I needed to, I would click the menu and select scientific view. So I have 14,800 times, I have to tell it multiply, parenthesis, 1.03, I'm at that step, but you could have done it at the prior step. Close my parentheses, and I want to raise that, so X to the Y, raise that to the 8th power. Now, notice, it put a little caret symbol there when I did that general exponent. You can type that in with the number 6 and the shift on your keyboard as well. You can do that here, and you can do that in Excel as well. All right, I'm going to hit equal. So this time, when I round my money, there's a 7 to the right of my 9. So my 9 becomes a 10. Put the 0 down and carry the 1 to see how the 19 becomes 20 cents. So $18,748.20. All right, if I need to know how much interest was earned, I would take that value and subtract the $14,800 that I started with, right? That's how much I put in the account. But 4 years later, if the account has $18,748.20, the difference is the interest I've earned. So if the question asks you for the compound interest, just do a subtraction at the end. All right. And sorry, just before we get there, that was in your textbook, section 5.2. So chapter 5, 5.2, pages 120 to 124 in your textbook. And our last topic, the annual percentage yield, is chapter 5, section 3, so 5.3 in your textbook, and it's right after that topic. So it starts at the bottom of page 124 and goes over to page 126. All right, so here's our equation off to the side, working that first practice problem here. If a bank features a savings account that has an annual percentage rate of 2.2% with interest compounded quarterly, and Joshua is depositing $9,500 into the account, then I'm going to plug all of those into my formula very carefully. That 0.022, don't forget the 0 between the decimal point and that first 2, right? 2.2%. Divide by 100 moves my decimal point 2 places, so it's 0.022. Compounded quarterly, well, there's 4 quarters in a year, so I'm dividing by 4. How much will it be have in the account in 1 year? So my exponent will just be 1 times 4, which is 4. So take your time, read through this example, make sure that you're coming up with the same values. Now, our annual percentage yield based on the first year, right? What is the annual percentage yield for the savings account? So we have a formula. Let me pull up our textbook, 1 second. Oops, I went too far. I was writing down the page number, not the, right? So like page 122 here in the document, not the page number in the PDF. So give me 1 second here. Let me be sure I get to the right place here. We went 5.3, page 124, 126. And this should have our formula on it. So we are on page 125, which is chapter 5. And if you downloaded the smaller PDF that has just chapters 4 through 6, it's number 28, page number 28 in that PDF file. All right, so our annual percentage yield, here is what we've done for our computation. We will end up being 1 plus our rate divided by our compounding frequency, raised to our compounding frequency as an exponent, and then minus 1. So it's showing you how it comes together and then simplifying it for you. So you don't have to do the algebra, but notice we take the balance after 1 year minus our starting principal. So in other words, how much interest did we get in that first year divided by our starting principal? And that will be our annual percentage yield that we can compare to. So if you have different investments at different banks or different options, coming up with an APY is a way to then compare across, right? Maybe one is a certain percent compounded semi-annually. Maybe another one is a different percent compounded monthly, right? Being able to compare them with this type of number is important. Right, so again, you have the formula, you don't have to do the algebra in between, but I wanted to show you the logic of where it comes from. All right, back to our PowerPoint. And our formula is right here for us. So we are going to do, I think I wrote the other one out on my paper. I'm not sure I wrote this one out with that first one. I wrote out the second one. We can do either one. Some of them you will see doesn't change much, right? So here we have semi-annually, and here we have daily. For the daily, you see a bigger change. So let's go ahead and do the daily one together. So here we have a bank features a savings account that has an annual percentage rate of 3.5% with interest compounded daily. What is the APY for that savings account? And round to the 0.1% for these. So we have that formula from our book was 1 plus, and we have our 0.035 or just 0.35, up to you. I like putting the 0 in front, but I know I've been saying it mostly it's just point, so I'll go back to this 0.035. And that's divided by our compounding frequency. And then it's going to be an exponent. So I'm using that little caret key on the computer to represent my exponent, compounding frequency, and then subtract 1. Let me get my calculator. All right, there we go. Slide it over a little. Not sure why the calculator is a little jumpy. Usually I can slide it around with no problem. Today it's a little jumpy. All right, now set up my parentheses. I have 1 plus 0.035 divided by 365. And again, once you click into the Windows calculator, you can do like I do. I'm typing right on my keyboard and putting it in that way. You're welcome to do it that way as well. I can type the parenthesis or hit the parenthesis, either one. And then we have our exponent key or the caret on the keyboard, 365. I'm going to go ahead and hit the equals to get that part, and then we'll do -1 to finish it out. See how it's 1 point something? That's why there's that -1 in our equation. So you want to do that -1 before you multiply by 100 to convert it to your percent. Okay, so now I'm going to do times 100. And see how the nominal rate that they were advertising was 3.5%. But because of the compounding, it's going to feel like 3.6% when I round to the 10th place, right? 3.561, right? It's more than 3.5% as an APY because of the compounding. And there's a couple examples and tables in the book to show you the more frequently it's compounded, the better you're going to see this grow. So some of these you might do, it's like, well, it rounds to the same, it's a little more, but it rounds to the same. Other ones you'll say, oh, it actually does round up a little bit because of that compounding. This one, 3.6 would be our APY. All right, that was our last slide. And again, right, there's some examples with this in the book showing you how that works. And I like this right here, and the table there shows you, right? Daily, monthly, annual. See how it increased. So annually, well, maybe the rate was already about 4%. Oh, but monthly, 4.074%. Ooh, daily, 4.081%, right? I'm getting more for my return. So that's the joy of compounding. Back to our course website. Again, I was in preview mode here with one of our assignments. So I'm going to exit out of that. Go back to our modules. And the other item to do this week, along with the practice problem, is the discussion. So give me just one moment and we will scroll down to the discussion. So you have graded homework problem assignments, but again, they're formative, as you saw with the preview of the My Open Math assignment. You have some videos in there. You can type it in. If it's not quite right, you have a couple chances to try it. Then you can click try similar and replace the problem. So you have lots of features in there to make it a learning experience. So it should not be stressful. It should be a, oh, this is here to help me kind of experience. All right, so I clicked on the first discussion note. It says you must post before seeing replies. So in other words, everybody's supposed to make their first post, the two problems that they're sharing, and then scroll through to see what other people are posting and interact with classmates. The goal here is to post two problems that are significant problems and from different sections. In other words, right, don't make them both the first two problems you saw in the first assignment, right? Make it two problems that are different, right? Don't make them both percent problems that are just basic this percent of that, right? Make one that, make something else a different problem. Please try to post two problems from different sections. It doesn't need to be two problems from each section, just two problems from different sections. So scoring is based on showing that you understood, that you applied some reasoning and strategies and thought procedurally through the solution, and that you communicated well, right? Sometimes communicating and strategy, I'm going back and forth, is, well, I think the person did it, they just didn't tell me, right? Try to show neat, organized work and communicate with a few sentences what you did and how you did it, right? How did you know that was the right solution? And then interacting with your classmates to get the full 10 points. I'm looking for more than just 2 days and a few follow-ups, right? So it's not too hard to get 7 or 8 points on that. I know we're all very busy, right? So if you post a very nice post with your two problems, that's 10 points for 3 of the categories. So that's 30 out of 40 points. And then it's pretty easy to get 7 points. You're posting once more, right? At least twice more for the 8 points on different days. But if you want the full 10 points, I'm looking for several interactions across a couple of days. All right, so that is everything for week 1. Keep in mind with the Labor Day holiday, there's no class next Monday, but I'll do a check-in and just send some notes out and see what people want. Do you want me to schedule a different day or just do a recording, do a little bit of a walkthrough, see if there's any issues coming up? We could just do some check-ins at office hours or a session. We'll see how it goes next week. Are there any questions before we call it a night tonight? All right, I know a couple people came and went. For those of you who logged in later, I know sometimes people are still at work or driving home or giving the kids a bath or whatever you need to do this time of night. It's okay if you're not interacting. Some people do a lot of listening and then work through examples later. That's fine. What I'll do is, like I did tonight, if I don't get a reaction back, I'll go ahead and say the answers and talk the rest of the way through so you can watch it later in a recording. That's no problem. So for those of you that are here, are there any more questions? I know we had a little chat at the beginning. Are there any quick questions before we close it out for tonight? All right, I see a little bit there. All right, if anybody needs anything, the inbox messaging tool is here to the left in the left-hand navigation. Use that as your first contact, but in the syllabus is also my other contact. Just keep in mind my last name is spelled C-U-R-R-I-E when you're typing in the email. All right, everybody, have a lovely week. I hope if you have Labor Day weekend plans that we have nice weather and everybody comes back refreshed and has a good week 1 experience. Take care, everyone.